You might want to stop everything right now, because what you're about to see is not just coins, it's hidden wealth sitting in plain sight inside everyday pocket change. These Washington quarters are being spent, ignored, and completely overlooked, while collectors are quietly paying life-changing money for them. And here's the warning you cannot ignore. Do not spend these coins. Because in today's video on CoinNova, we're exposing the top 3 most valuable and ultra-rare Washington quarter dollars ever found in circulation. And each one gets more shocking, more expensive, and more dangerous to overlook than the last. We're talking about silent fortunes, real auction shock moments, and coins that collectors are fighting over behind the scenes while most people have no idea. So before you hand over your change at a store or dump it in a coin jar, check your pocket right now. Because nobody talks about these hidden treasures, and once you see what they're really worth, you'll never look at quarters the same way again. Stay till the end, because the last coin is where everything changes. Coin number 1. There's a strange kind of silence around this coin, the kind that hides something dangerous in plain sight. Because the 1993 Washington quarter doesn't look like anything special at first glance. In fact, most people would see it, toss it, and forget it within seconds. But what if I told you that a single version of this exact coin has quietly reached $158,000 in today's market? And the wild part? It's still showing up in circulation. Now look closer at that year. 1993 America was in a transitional economic phase. Manufacturing standards were tightening, production was speeding up, and the U.S. Mint was under massive pressure to produce billions of coins quickly for everyday commerce. When that kind of pressure hits a minting system, something always slips through. Tiny imperfections, overlooked die strain, subtle surface anomalies that most machines and people never catch. That's where this quarter becomes dangerous to ignore. At first touch, it feels ordinary. It weighs around 5.67 grams, with a diameter of 24.26 millimeters and a thickness of roughly 1.75 millimeters. But collectors aren't chasing the size. They're chasing the story written into the metal itself. The edge shows a standard reeded pattern, but the real obsession begins on the surface. The obverse shows George Washington facing left with that classic stern expression that has been carried on U.S. quarters for decades. The inscriptions, "Liberty" to "In God We Trust," and the date 1993 sit there like they always do. Nothing looks unusual until you notice the subtle anomalies collectors lose their minds over. Some 1993 quarters from certain mint batches, especially those with a P-mint mark, show unusual die pressure inconsistencies. That's where the design appears slightly softened in certain areas, while other regions look sharper than they should. It's not obvious to the untrained eye, but under magnification, it becomes a completely different story. Now flip it. On the reverse, the eagle design spreads its wings, clutching arrows and an olive branch, symbolizing both war and peace. United States of America curves above it, while quarter dollar anchors the bottom. But here's where collectors lean in closer, because on rare error-struck examples, the central strike alignment can be slightly off. That tiny shift creates a visual tension that experienced collectors immediately recognize. And here's the part most people never realize. These coins were not made to be perfect. They were made under pressure. High-speed production lines, aging dies, and relentless demand created the perfect storm for scarcity to form without anyone noticing. Now let's talk about metal composition. This quarter is made from a copper-nickel-clad structure with a pure copper core sandwiched between outer layers. It gives the coin that silver-like appearance, but underneath, It carries a completely different internal structure, one that reacts differently to wear, oxidation, and time. That's why some 1,993 quarters develop unusual brown spotting or dark toning patterns that collectors obsess over. And yes, those brown dots you see on some examples? Most people think it's damage. But in the collector world, certain patterns of toning are treated like fingerprints of authenticity and age, especially when they form naturally without cleaning. Because here's the rule that destroys more value than anything else. Never clean this coin. Not even a little. Cleaning wipes away history. It erases surface integrity. It turns a silent fortune into a worthless piece of metal in seconds. Now imagine holding one in your hand. Cool to the touch. Slightly worn edges from decades of circulation. A faint, dull shine that tells you it has been everywhere. Gas stations, vending machines, forgotten drawers, passed from hand to hand without anyone realizing what it could become. That's why collectors don't just buy these coins, they hunt them. Because the demand is not about beauty. It's about survival rarity. Out of billions minted, only a microscopic fraction survive in collectible condition with the right combination of surface quality, strike detail, and unaltered toning. Most were spent, damaged, or melted down through time. And here's where things get intense. Auction behavior around coins like this is not loud. It's quiet, calculated, and aggressive behind the scenes. Collectors don't always announce what they're chasing. They wait. They watch. And when a clean example appears, bidding escalates fast, sometimes within minutes, because everyone knows the truth. There are not enough of these left to satisfy demand. That's why this 1,993 Washington quarter has become a silent obsession in certain collecting circles. Not because it's flashy, but because it hides value in plain sight. And if you're wondering whether you should keep one if you find it, the answer is simple. Yes, but only if you don't touch it. Do not spend this coin. Do not clean it. Do not improve it. Even the smallest mistake can destroy what collectors are willing to pay life-changing money for. Professional grading is everything here. A certified coin can transform a common-looking quarter into a verified auction piece worth thousands, or, in rare cases, far more depending on condition and errors. Now here's the psychological part most people miss. Collectors aren't just buying metal, they're buying the chance that someone else overlooked a fortune. That emotional tension, the idea that a coin like this could still be sitting in everyday circulation, is what fuels the obsession. And that's why people keep checking their change again, and again, and again. Because once you know what this 1,993 Washington quarter can become, you start seeing every coin differently. Every handful of change starts to feel like a hidden opportunity waiting to be uncovered. But here's the twist. This is only the beginning. Because the next coin is not just rarer, it's far more unpredictable. And it has collectors competing in a way most people would never expect. Next up, there's something unsettling about this coin because it doesn't look valuable at all. In fact, it looks like the kind of quarter you'd ignore without a second thought. But that's exactly how the biggest mistakes happen. Because right now, a simple 1,986 Washington quarter with a D mint mark has quietly shocked collectors, reaching $163,000 in today's market for a rare, highly specific surviving example. And here's the part that should make you pause. Most people have already spent it. Not once, but over and over again for decades. This coin isn't just rare because of its age. It's rare because of what was happening in America when it was made. Back in 1986, the United States was deep in the Reagan economic era. Industry was expanding, defense spending was high, and the U.S. Mint in Denver was running at full speed to meet nationwide circulation demand. Billions of coins were being produced under intense pressure. High output, fast turnaround, minimal tolerance for delay. And when production moves that fast, perfection starts slipping through the cracks. That's where this quarter becomes dangerous, because at first glance, it feels completely normal. You'd hold it, glance at it, maybe even flip it without thinking twice. But under that ordinary surface is a coin that collectors describe as quietly misjudged by the public. Now let's break it down properly, because this is where things get serious. The 1986 Washington quarter follows the classic U.S. design that most people recognize instantly. On the obverse, you see George Washington facing left, his profile sharp but familiar. The inscriptions "Liberty" and "In God We Trust" are engraved above and beside him, while the date 1986 sits at the bottom with the small but crucial D mint mark nearby, confirming its Denver origin. But here's what most people miss. The real value isn't in what you see, it's in how it was struck. During this period, the Denver Mint was operating under high-speed production stress. Dies wore out faster than expected. Strike pressure varied slightly between batches. And when that happens, subtle inconsistencies begin to appear. Things like weak relief areas, uneven surface texture, or slight misalignment that only trained eyes notice. Now flip the coin. On the reverse, the iconic eagle stands proudly, with wings spread wide, clutching arrows and an olive branch. United States of America arches above, while quarter dollar sits firmly below. It looks identical to millions of others, but rare surviving examples show microscopic variations in strike clarity and field smoothness that set them apart under magnification. That's what collectors hunt for. Not perfection, but imperfection with a story. Now let's talk physical reality, because this is where people get fooled every single day. This coin weighs approximately 5.67 grams, with a diameter of 24.26 millimeters and a thickness of about 1.75 millimeters. The edge is reeded, designed to prevent clipping and counterfeiting. It feels standard. It sounds standard when dropped. It even looks standard under casual inspection. And that's the trap. Because value doesn't come from how it feels, it comes from what survived unnoticed. The metal composition is a copper-nickel-clad structure, with a copper core sandwiched between outer layers. That gives it its silver-like appearance, but over time, this composition reacts to circulation, skin oils, moisture, and environmental exposure in unpredictable ways. Some 1986 D quarters develop unusual surface toning, light brown spotting, gray haze, or uneven darkening that collectors sometimes classify as natural aging markers when untouched. But here's the warning: any cleaning destroys this instantly. Wiping it, polishing it, even trying to improve its look can erase decades of value in seconds. Now here's where emotion enters the collector world. Because people aren't just collecting quarters like this, they're chasing the feeling that something valuable slipped through the system unnoticed. And the 1986 D quarter fits that obsession perfectly. Why? Because survival rates in high-grade condition are extremely low. Most entered circulation immediately. Most were heavily worn. Most were ignored for decades. And only a tiny fraction remain in collectible condition with enough detail integrity to attract serious auction attention. That's why, when one's surface is in strong condition, collectors don't hesitate. They react. Quiet bidding starts. Interest spreads. Then suddenly, competition builds behind the scenes. Not loud auctions, controlled aggression. The kind where collectors already know what they want before the coin is even fully listed. And that's how a simple quarter turns into a six-figure headline. But there's another layer most people never think about. Condition is everything, but original condition is everything multiplied. A coin that has never been cleaned, never been polished, and never been improved carries its natural surface history. That history is what grading companies evaluate. Once that surface is altered, even slightly, the coin drops dramatically in collector interest. That's why professionals always repeat the same warning. Never clean the coin. Not even once. Now let's talk about what makes collectors emotionally attached to this specific coin. It's not just value. It's the idea that something so ordinary-looking could be silently holding a fortune, sitting in drawers, jars, old wallets, vending machine change, or even parking lot coins that people never bother to check. That psychological shock is what fuels the entire Washington Quarter hunting market. Because every collector knows one truth. The next valuable coin is always already out there. You just haven't noticed it yet. Now imagine holding a 1986D quarter in your hand. Slight wear on the edges, a faint dull shine, maybe a few tiny surface marks from decades of movement. Nothing dramatic, nothing that screams wealth. But that's exactly what makes it powerful. Because the biggest mistake is assuming value always looks obvious. It doesn't. It hides. And that's why this coin continues to gain attention. Not because it's flashy, but because it's quietly misunderstood. Now here's what smart collectors do first. They check the mint mark. Always. D means Denver, and that alone narrows the search. Then they inspect the surface under angled light, looking for unusual strike consistency, unusual toning patterns, or any sign that the coin came from a higher quality production run. But even then, patience matters more than speed, because rushing leads to mistakes, and mistakes destroy value. The smartest collectors don't clean. They don't rush. They don't assume. They authenticate, they grade, and they wait. Because patience is what turns discovery into profit. And here's something most people don't realize. The market for coins like this isn't shrinking, it's tightening. Fewer high-quality examples remain available every year. That means demand slowly builds while supply quietly disappears into circulation damage, loss, and time. That imbalance is exactly what pushes prices upward. Now let's bring it back to reality. A coin like this doesn't need to look special to change someone's life. It just needs to be the right version of itself in the right condition at the right moment. That's it. And most people will never notice it. But you might. And if you do, the worst thing you can do is treat it like normal change. Because normal change doesn't sell for $163,000. Not even close. Now stay focused, because the next coin isn't just rarer, it behaves differently in auctions, and collectors don't just want it. They compete for it in silence. Next up, you ever hold something in your hand and feel like it's heavier than it should be? Not in weight, but in meaning? Because this is exactly what happens when collectors find the 1969 Washington Quarter with no mint mark, scattered gray dot toning, and an uncirculated finish that somehow survived decades without being destroyed. And right now, one verified example has reached around $189,000 in today's market. But here's what makes this one different from everything you've seen so far. This coin doesn't look rare, it looks forgotten. And that's where the danger begins. Because most people don't realize some of the most valuable coins in circulation don't announce themselves. They don't shine. They don't scream value. They quietly disguise themselves as ordinary pocket change until someone trained enough notices what everyone else missed. And the 1969 Washington quarter is one of those silent anomalies. Let's go straight into it. Back in 1969, the United States was going through one of the most intense cultural and industrial transitions in its modern history. The space race was at its peak. Manufacturing systems were under pressure. The economy was expanding rapidly, and the U.S. Mint was pushing out massive quantities of coins to keep up with national demand. Speed mattered more than perfection. And when speed becomes priority number one, precision always starts to slip. That's the environment this coin was born in. Now here's where it gets interesting. Unlike many coins that carry a visible mint mark, this 1969 Washington quarter is known for its missing mint mark variation, which immediately puts it into a completely different category in collector psychology. Because mint marks are supposed to tell you where a coin came from, Philadelphia, Denver, or San Francisco. But when that identifier is missing, it creates uncertainty. And in the coin world, uncertainty often equals value. But this one doesn't rely on just that. Not even close. At first glance, it feels like a normal silver-toned quarter. You'd see it, maybe flip it, maybe even toss it into a jar without a second thought. But under closer inspection, something strange appears. Faint grey dot formations scattered across the surface, almost like time itself left fingerprints on the metal. Collectors don't ignore that. They study it. Now let's break down the structure of the coin itself, because physical reality is where most people finally understand what they're holding. The 1969 Washington quarter carries the classic U.S. profile design on the obverse. George Washington facing left, calm expression, almost presidential in silence. The inscriptions "Liberty" and "In God We Trust" frame the design, while the date 1969 sits clearly at the bottom. But the missing mint mark changes everything. That small absence creates a ripple effect in collector valuation, because it immediately raises questions about production origin and strike classification. Now flip it. On the reverse, the eagle spreads its wings wide, gripping arrows and an olive branch. United States of America curves above in bold lettering, while quarter dollar sits below like a foundation stamp. It's a design millions of people recognize, but almost nobody examines closely enough to notice what matters. Now let's talk about something most people completely overlook: the physical engineering of this coin. The 1969 Washington quarter weighs approximately 5.67 grams. Its diameter is 24.26 millimeters, with a thickness of around 1.75 millimeters. The edge is reeded, designed not just for aesthetics, but for anti-counterfeiting protection and wear resistance. On paper, it sounds ordinary. In reality, it's not. Because what separates this coin from normal circulation pieces is not size or shape, it's condition and surface preservation. This specific example is classified as uncirculated, which means it never entered general circulation wear cycles. It was either preserved early, stored improperly, or escaped circulation damage entirely. That alone is rare. But there's more happening beneath the surface. The coin is composed of a copper-nickel-clad structure with a pure copper core layered between outer nickel-rich surfaces. This combination gives it durability and a silvery appearance, but also makes it reactive over time. That's where the gray dot toning comes in. These tiny surface anomalies form due to micro-oxidation patterns, environmental exposure, and long-term storage conditions. Most people see them as damage. Collectors see them as evidence of untouched history, especially when the coin remains uncleaned. And here's where a critical warning comes in. Do not clean this coin, not under any circumstance, because cleaning destroys the natural surface. It removes toning. It erases originality. And in coin grading, originality is everything. Even a single wipe can reduce a six-figure coin to ordinary pocket change value. Now let's talk about why collectors are obsessed with this specific 1969 variation. It comes down to three psychological triggers: rarity without warning, condition without circulation, and history without visibility. This coin doesn't advertise itself. It hides inside everyday life. It passes through hands unnoticed. It sits in drawers, jars, collections, and forgotten storage boxes, while its value quietly increases in the background. Collectors call coins like this sleepers, because they look asleep until someone wakes them up. Now imagine the auction world reaction when a true uncirculated, no mint mark, grey-toned 1969 Washington quarter appears. It doesn't start loud. It starts controlled. One bid, then another, then silence. Because serious collectors don't rush. They calculate. They wait. And once confidence builds that the coin is authentic, the tension rises fast. That's when value escalates. And in rare cases like this, it escalates dramatically. Now here's what most beginners miss completely. The difference between a $20 quarter and a $189,000 quarter is not the coin itself. It's the details inside the coin that only trained eyes recognize. Surface preservation, strike consistency, mint mark absence, tonal authenticity, and most importantly, untouched originality. Even a coin with perfect design can lose value if it has been altered. That's why professional grading becomes essential. A certified grade transforms uncertainty into documented value. It tells the market, this is real, this is verified, and this is rare. Now let's slow this down for a second. Imagine holding it. Cool metal, slightly muted shine. Gray dot patterns almost like cosmic dust embedded into history. Washington's face, still visible, still firm, still unchanged after all these decades. And in that moment, it doesn't feel like change anymore. It feels like potential. But here's the dangerous part. Most people never stop long enough to notice it. They spend it. They ignore it. They lose it without ever knowing what it could have been. That's why this coin continues to gain attention in collector circles. Not because it's flashy, but because it's invisible wealth hiding in plain sight. Now here's what smart collectors do immediately. They separate uncirculated coins from circulation wear. They check for mint mark absence carefully. They inspect gray dot toning under angled lighting. And they never rush decisions based on surface assumptions. Because in this world, rushing is expensive, and patience is profitable. But even among experienced collectors, this 1969 Washington quarter remains emotionally powerful because it represents something bigger than money. It represents missed opportunity. Every time one appears, it forces the same question. How many more are still out there, sitting unnoticed? And the truth is, nobody knows. That uncertainty is exactly what fuels demand. Because scarcity doesn't always come from production. Sometimes it comes from awareness. Now before we end this coin, remember this one rule more than anything else. Never clean it. Never alter it. Never assume it's ordinary. Because ordinary coins don't quietly reach nearly $189,000 in value. And if this one surprised you, the next discovery in the world of Washington quarters doesn't just increase value, it completely changes how collectors hunt forever.